It's the 22nd of February, it's 2024. And I'm going to be your host tonight. I'm Dana Durnford. Welcome, everybody, to our Sunday night show. It's the first show of the week. You can call into these live shows at 709-589-4406. 709-589-4406. Hope you're having a reasonable day. And we're off and running. I do believe this is the last day of James Lucid's contest. I got a link in the description for you. I just put in the chat room. I'll put it in the description hopefully after the show so you can get more views and votes. Everything counts. With an anti-nuclear song, how can we lose, right? It's a win-win. We're going to be talking about Fukushima, the headlines from the early days. One Fukushima may destroy the whole country. Collapse of a whole country is possible. It's worse. It's an ecosystem worldwide. The biosphere itself will collapse. And Fukushima was 38 reactor cores melted down. Chernobyl was a single reactor core. It was a very small reactor core. Or Chernobyl was a small reactor core compared to any of the Fukushima reactors. Nearly 5,000 nuclear plant workers suffered internal radiation exposures after visiting Fukushima. The workers are the homeless and the destitute. And you might say, well, Dana, they're in a paper suit, so how could they get sick from the radiation? And the nuclear industry claimed they burned 7,000 paper suits every day. Or Tyvek. It's the same thing. It can't protect you at a nuclear meltdown. It's impossible. This building in particular, Reactor 4, it's completely gone. But they built this contraption off-site and installed it over the reactor. And then they put these panels all around it till eventually this is just a shell. There's nothing there. And this is a nuclear meltdown. You can't go up there and do it. It's done by cranes. So then when they had the covers put around the building that doesn't even exist, the building is gutted all the way to the floor. It's completely destroyed. This was a 190-foot building. They put out pictures like this. You notice they're standing on steel plates, right? That's designed to shield them. They poured cement, and they put pavement, and more cement, and steel sheets, and more pavement, more steel sheets, because they bulldoze a lot of the assemblies directly into the ground. Originally was almost 1 million sievers around these multiple nuclear reactors. The mask they got on can't filter radiation. The suits can't protect you from gamma shines, alphas, neutrons, or beta rays. It's absurd. So there's nothing at the top of the building, but yet they claim they built this contraption over a building that no longer exists and put covers on it, and then claim to look like that on the inside. So deep inside the building. So what they're looking at is deep inside of that stump. Right? Remember how they built the construction of it? It's literally a cover-up in every sense of that word. And so when you look way down into the building, this is what they're claiming to look like. Certainly this is simply not true. And it had lulled the entire planet into complacency. James is saying that it actually goes through another week. That's very cool. Thanks, James. There's still hope for us yet, James. Cesium found in children's urine shows ongoing widespread problems in Japan. October 7, 2013. Ongoing problem in Japan. A very meager way to articulate the incredible enormity of this issue. An acceptable amount of radioactive cesium, it can't be just cesium. Cesium doesn't separate from the uranium, the plutonium, the americium, the neptunium. I don't understand what's wrong with this planet. It's not a very difficult subject. If you watch my videos a few times, then there's no reason that you would be naive, you would hope. Maybe I'm a shitty fucking teacher, who knows? And I'm a researcher, and I've actually done absurd amount of research. The substance, Cesium-134-37, 137, does not exist in nature and causes damage to the human body. It's catastrophic damage. It's permanent, and your body attacks it every second for the rest of your life with white blood cells. So it's very nasty on your autoimmune defense. You're compromising your autoimmune system. And it's for the rest of your life on top of that. It was widely reported that a citizen group in Tokyo region found cesium in the children's urine recently. While this is notable, it isn't unique. Radioactive cesium has been found in the urine of children across the wide area of northern Japan since 2011. And the levels do not seem to be going away. Well, cesium is not going away for 300 years. And when you talk about cesium, forget about cesium. Think about the plutonium and the uranium, and the curium isotopes. The idea of talking about cesium is to distract you away from the other isotopes. And cesium pulses energy 600 feet every second. So it's not a game. It's real stuff. This is nasty stuff. High levels were detected still now around Tokyo in 2012 in places that were not expected, like Akita. But Canada, United States was hit with 1 million to 10 million atoms per cubic meter of air, sustained. And that was I will show you that coming up, actually. That's a French study. So Akita, Fukushima's right here. Akita's way up there. And they had catastrophic numbers up there. Does the fact that nuclear scientists and journalists lied about every facet of Fukushima meltdowns concern you? I think it should be mortify you. A journalist is somebody you should fear. They're the worst humans conceivable. And they seem to take great pleasure in destroying everything and everybody. And they do it for a lousy paycheck on top of that. Oh, we got James is calling in, actually. That's cool. Is James Lucid on the phone? Hi, James. How are you, sir?
No, I just want to be real quick because, Kevin did a great cover of the story that came out of the Finn well that came washed ashore up in California today or the other day. And it's interesting because they take a picture of the Finn well that's dead on the beach, and it's like a minnow. It's all shrunk up. It's completely emaciated. There's no question, right?
Yeah.
But the story, they have these scientists out there, and they're like, oh, yeah, it's great. We got an opportunity to take samples and all this stuff. And they're talking about the well. They're like, yeah, it's the normal weight. This is the great, we're going to examine the stomach, like the whale's in perfect condition. They're just straight up lying at this point. Even with the picture. Like they're like counting on the public to not even know what a normal whale looks like at this point.
Well, I think that's the idea, is to make people think if they do come across these whales that looks normal. Like we've argued that before, remember? And I feel bad. I feel bad for you because you sound like me in a way where I get really frustrated, and every time I read these stories, and I'm outraged, and then I put it into a folder, and eventually I do a whole show on this stuff. But most of the rage is already gone because a lot of that stuff is a month old before we actually do the...
Oh, I get it. Oh, yeah. I know, Dana. I mean... Yeah.
I'm just saying...
I feel like the temperature is just raising up. It's just getting worse. And it's like, they're at the point where they're like, well, yeah, seeing these whales, they're kind of rare to begin with. To see them beached is like a bigger issue. But, it's probably human climate change, Dana. Like, that's what they...
Every time I hear the word climate change, I start pulling hair out of my head.
It's insane. So I just needed to call in about that. Just put that on the radar because
I didn't read the story yet. I didn't see the story, so I'll be looking for that after the show for sure. But it's good to hear somebody be outraged.
Well, whenever any of this comes up, I just get with AI. I'm like, we got to do a song about this.
Absolutely, I love it. I love it.
I literally spend like 30 minutes, trying to really capture the essence of what I'm trying. And it's like, it's a big ordeal and it's an expensive process just to get something decent to come across because you have, anyway, it's like a slot machine. You're just like playing a slot machine and maybe you'll get the jackpot on the right thing you're looking for, right? That kind of deal. But you got to keep playing to win.
You do.
But so that's just part of it. But yeah, this whole remix thing, like I swear, Dana, like I can't imagine how cool that would be. To be flown up to New York and be like, Dana Durnford and Kevin Blanche, Fukushima, everybody, let's go. Rock the crowd. Can you imagine? But that
really. Things do happen sometimes, right? And
I mean, I printed out the link and I go to this local vape store and I'm like, hey, and I told this lady behind the counter all about nuclear, because I tell people all the time. Yeah, everywhere just like you do, just like I took it from you. Like you just the inspiration that just follows through everyone that follows you.
We never give up. We never give up, right?
We can't.
No.
But this lady, she had this. I just remember talking to her about nuclear energy, and she didn't know about Fukushima. Like nobody does. That's fine. But you have to educate people. It's just so crazy how anyone under the age of 30 has no idea what Fukushima is. You just have to understand that. You have to. It's just like
you have to accept that. Yeah, you have to accept it. And they're good at covering it up. My goodness, are they ever good at it?
Oh my God!
Like throwing a turd in the punch bowl, so to speak. Yeah.
But the human spirit, like people that are good-natured people, that they have the instincts to tell like what you're telling them is valid. So like they wake up, they hear about nuclear energy, and like, do you realize that they need gas and coal plants to run a nuclear plant? Like, does that make sense to you? Like, why?
It doesn't make sense. No.
So it's stuff like that. And by the way, there was this video. I don't want to take too much time.
It's okay.
There was a video that was just released about how Microsoft is going to reopen 3 Mile Island. That whole thing. I wrote a comment, and no one's rebutted me. No one's wrote a comment. I'm like the last comment on this guy. I'm like, because everyone's like, oh yeah, like nuclear is going to help with AI. Everyone, right?
It was everywhere yesterday and the day before the headlines. It was everywhere.
So it was just like what you said before. Like right when the video comes out, all the pro-nuclear people, they all rush to the video, they make their comment, and they never return.
No, that's right, yeah. And it might be bots, we don't know, right? But there is something tangible going on there that, they're very good at being scumbags, and nobody's allowed to have an alternative narrative. No one's allowed to have a debate. Debate has to be the nuclear industry's kind of debate where you have controlled opposition.
They won't even bother to debate.
No.
Like I just wrote them, no one here realizes the fraud and scam of nuclear energy. For one thing, you need gas and coal it can't run on its own power. And, I just wrote this whole thing out, and no one's replied. No one's bothered to debate me.
No.
And I'm like, because no one gets it. They understand the surface level bullshit about nuclear energy. They don't understand what's really going on behind the scenes. And when they see it for themselves, they go and research this, and then they're like, wait a minute, how come no one told me this? And, I don't know.
It's dark. It's so dark.
Yeah.
I posted Thursday night's show up at BitChute, and I got up the next morning and never had no views. Nothing. And I got 350 subscribers or something. And it occurred to me, there is not a single person on BitChute that talks about Fukushima, only me.
Right, there's nobody. It's just
not a single person, nobody. It's a very active community, right? You got all the big mouthpieces are on it. And they'll blame heart problems, liver problems, lung problems, respiratory, everything on anything but Fukushima. Fukushima is never a chunk of the conversation. When it's the biggest chunk of the conversation, it's the same thing with the marine species die-off. Yeah, and and when you try to explain to people that the whales are emaciated, there's something goes wrong in their head. It's just like they're gonna fall over or something. They can't. They're like no compute. But that's what's going on. The whales are emaciated, and we're seeing the numbers we're seeing are, say, 10,350 confirmed gray whales that died of emaciation. There was 7,000 extra humpback whales during an unusual mortality event, an extra 7,000 that they acknowledged starved to death. And this is not the canary in the coal mine. This is the biggest animal on the planet.
Well, what's really alarming is this consensus feeling amongst the scientific community that this dilution principle exists. Like they haven't seen the images of Voyager, way out in space, taking a picture out, and we're like this little blue dot. Do you understand radiation can extend way outside of that? And it's you guys don't get it. There is no the oceans are a delicate balance. It's an interconnected system. You can't put man-made radioisotopes, flood that, and expect that the dilution is going to take care of the problem. And now we got proof. The whales are skinny. They're so skinny you can put them in the back of a Honda Civic.
Yeah, it's horrifying.
It's horrifying about it.
And the birds are all emaciated. The migratory birds.
It's all gone. It's gone. But yeah. Anyway, let me let you go. I didn't want to take this much time, Dan, but thank you so much.
No, that's great. No, glad to hear from you, James. Love you, buddy. You take care now.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, man.
Bye-bye. It's James Lucid. James. James is typically in the comments section. Or he's lurking out there listening in the background. He's been around for many, many years. And so when you see James and other people like that starting to get really upset, the nuclear industry hasn't got a chance. That's what we need. We need people that take an initiative and just take a chance, I got my specialty. Kevin Blanche got his specialties. But we need a lot of people just gutting the industry. Because they're gutting you. I can tell you that much right now. What have I got? I got 17 people on my show that I've been doing for over a decade. 17. it's because I'm not talking about shit on the stick, right? And I got a lousy 12 likes, bless your hearts, everybody that done that, and 16 votes. Now everybody knows, I've been doing this for over a decade, everybody knows I start my show on Sunday night. And they're so terrified of anybody having a conversation. And I'll give you an idea how YouTube works. So last year, I went out and bought not a burner phone, but just a cheap phone, and I bought a number, basically. And the idea was to open up a second YouTube account, a backup channel, like a lot of people does, right? And so I posted a link below to my backup channel, my description. 2 hours later, that was gone. It was against YouTube's policies. They didn't say what policies. So the next day I went out and bought another number and put it on my cell phone, and so I had a brand new number, and I opened up a YouTube account. Everything was perfect, and I sat for about 4 hours. Nothing happened, of course. But the minute but within an hour of me putting it up under my YouTube video as my backup channel, that was closed too. Which meant that YouTube, we have lobbyists from the nuclear industry at YouTube monitoring my channel, my descriptions, and everybody else. And they acted on that in the most belligerent way possible. And it shows you discontent, but it also shows you this hate for anything to do with truth. And imagine what kind of subhuman you got to be to have that particular job. What kind of degenerate you actually got to be to get that job working at YouTube to monitor an actual honest and a real person like myself. I'm a good person. I'm a real person. I'm not like them. I'm not a scumbag like them. I'm actually a real person. And I don't hide away, and I justify all of my assertions with the documentation. But the whole thing is, that's the biggest platform on the planet. It streams perfect on everybody's devices, no matter what device they're using, cell phones, tablets, computers, etc., etc. And it's free. And so I'm seriously considering closing down my YouTube channel. Very grave concerns about what they're doing to my video after 12 hours. They're appearing to be adding software to my video, the only reason they would do it is to track you. And so that's a big concern for me. And so I'm not sure if this channel is going to last much longer, because YouTube is so much censorship, and they're so evil. They're so unbelievably, unimaginably evil people. They're the very epitome of evil. That is very difficult for me to stay on this platform. And there's other platforms out there. It's not about the views, it's about what they're doing. And that they're so evil. And they've been at it for so long. And calling them evil is being polite. These are degenerates that are doing this stuff. They're the worst humans imaginable. And of course, they work for the nuclear industry. The World Health Organization, the worst humans imaginable. And you're not allowed to argue with the World Health Organization's narrative on YouTube, where they'll take your video down, give you a strike, or take your channel down. And BitChute is full of people that argued with the World Health Organization, come out with a debate against it, and you're not allowed to debate it. And how the hell do we ever get to the stage where an unelected corporation has that much influence, that much power? You know, my last site, I had a decade of my life tied up in that site, all my research expeditions. And when I was out looking for spiders, they took my site down with 25,000 subscribers. No emails, no strikes on my account. They just disappeared it. And when I appealed it, they immediately just denied it. Within 30 minutes, I got an email, denied. It's the same people that are monitoring you right now. They are the lowest form of, they are cowards. And they can call in and prove they're not cowards. Call in, tell me your name. Send me a picture in my text message, and we can put your face up there. Let's have a real debate to the people that are censoring me. Oh, that's right, you can't do it because you're a coward. You're a coward like your children and like your wife and your husband and your friends and your families, your fathers and your mothers. That's why you got that job. It's because the industry loves cowards, right? The World Health Organization, which is not a World Health Organization, they don't have any sovereignty over any country. They're the most degenerate people you'll ever come across. Downplays Fukushima health risk is preparing to release a new report, 2012, that declares cancer from Fukushima disaster will not significantly increase. Now, of course, this is 2012, and what happened in 2012 about cancer in Japan? This was a retweet of the Japan's National Cancer Center. Says the number of patients rose by 865,000 extra cancer patients in 2012. And in 2012, the World Health Organization, a month later, came out and said there will be no significant increase. So when you got almost 1 million extra cancers in the first year, not everybody got health care, not everybody's diagnosed. They don't offer an alternative reason why there's an extra almost 1 million cancers. And cancer is not the only illness or disease or autoimmune deficiencies or injury or illness. The World Health Organization position paper is based on information they obtained from the Fukushima Medical University, which we covered in our last show. The Fukushima Medical University, their legacy is horrific. They're the cover story. And they destroy their whole country because they have a job at a university. Try wrapping your mind around that statement, because that's actually what happened. Because they have a particular position at the university that pays really well and gives them some prestige. They're willing to destroy their entire country and their loved ones and friends and families by being lawyers for an organization that hates their guts too. Both are institutions well known for bias and actions intended to downplay the true situation in Fukushima. And Dr. Yamashita was installed as vice president of Medical University soon after the disaster. He's the same guy who came out and was doing a lecture and was caught on video saying harm from radiation only comes to people who don't smile. If you smile, then radiation can't hurt you. He's a doctor, and he's the head of the Fukushima Medical University on top of that. The vice president. And this is the same guy who came out and suggested that suggested strongly, made that statement on video. The World Health Organization missed their lack of complete and good data, so they turned to Chernobyl data and referenced the atomic bomb data, which most of the studies are going through Imperial University in the United Kingdom, a notorious lapdog for the nuclear industry. Geraldine Thomas, many other degenerates that worked there. How did we lose control of our planet, and why are we so complacent that we won't hold these people accountable? I can tell you how I'm willing to hold them accountable. I have no qualms about going after everybody here. They're very lucky that I'm not in a position, because I would launch lawsuits against every one of these people in a heartbeat. The atomic bomb exposure has been cited as being quite different exposure than those exposed during a nuclear disaster, and not an apple-and-apple comparison. First off, the atomic bomb studies are based on external data, not internal data. And the Hibakusha, I probably butchered that pronunciation, the victims of Nagasaki, Hiroshima, had fought for 70 years for medical attention, and 99% of them have died since, right? And so 2 years ago, the Prime Minister of Japan decided to give the remaining survivors, the few small group of survivors, medical help. But up to that point, they refused to acknowledge that there was internal radiation contamination. I mean, evil doesn't describe the nuclear industry. And letting them get away and let them continue to do what they're doing is the quickest way of destroying your own life and everybody else's life and every bird and insect and animal and whale and bird on this planet. You're making a fatal mistake by not holding this industry accountable. It's a fatal mistake. And you have nothing to lose by going after the nuclear industry. You have everything to lose by not going after the nuclear industry. They're the Achilles heel for every species on this planet is the emissions from all the nuclear for 80 years. I mean, they went out and dumped it in the ocean for 30 years straight. And they knew exactly what they were doing. And they done it in order to destroy the ecosystem and the biosphere. They done it on purpose. And a lot of them are still alive and can be held accountable. We can't stop the extinction event, but we can hold them accountable. And if that's not a good thing, what is? And why would you... So they're saying there's not a lot of information. The information they're using is Chernobyl and the Nagasaki Hiroshima events, atomic bomb detonations. But there was 865,000 extra cancers in the first year. So there was certainly enough information available after the first year to quantify that. I mean, they picked up 30 million one-ton bags of radiation. And when you pick up 30 million one-ton bags of radiation, and you refuse to acknowledge that there's a harm. I screwed that up, did I? Hang on here. I'll get there. I'm not the sharpest. The nuclear industry is only getting away with it because people sit in silence. People refuse to get motivated, refuse to understand, refused to call a monster a monster. They got opinion about everything, but they got no opinion about nuclear. Nuclear has made people chew Spider-Man and the Hulk and all the propaganda. Incapable, and like the Simpsons. Most people, you talk about how evil the Simpsons actually was. You can't get the sentence out of your mouth before they're going to say to you, well, I like the Simpsons. Refusing, like just absolutely refuse to be smart. They refuse to have a conversation or a debate. They refuse it. They reject it, and that's driven into their heads through the propaganda. And the people that continue to watch TV, it's impossible to have a conversation with them. Their brains are scattered because they watch TV. And it's a drug, right? They can't turn it off. They can't get away from it. They're drawn back to it. It lulls their... And so the TV is at a frequency... Like they acknowledged this when they built TVs, right? That it was set at a frequency to control a child, so the child couldn't turn away from the TV. And the parents would go in and say, come on, it's time to go to school. You couldn't get the child to look away from the TV. The child couldn't hear him because they were in this trance. And because the flicker rate of the TV was the same flicker rate as the brain waves. This was on purpose. It didn't need to be. It was on purpose because it was able to... Like Australia banned TV for children under 4 years of age because that turned out to be true, that it was so dangerous. Like, I don't hate anything, but I hate the nuclear industry because their legacy of evil is, we have nothing to compare it to. They're evil symmetrically throughout the entire planet. Every time you look at the nuclear industry, no matter which country you're looking at, if it has nuclear, you'll see all the hallmarks of contamination, destruction, emissions, the pollution, and catastrophic health impacts. cancer epidemic started in the 70s after a decade and a half, 2 decades of radioactive fallout from the nuclear war that people call nuclear testing for some reason. They can't wrap their mind around that a nuclear test is a nuclear war. It's the same bomb, the same radioactive fallout. But that doesn't fit in their paradigm. They're too fucking stupid with all the propaganda to hear the conversation. They reject it. And if they reject it, they'll fight with you and argue with you over nothing, because that's what TV has taught them to do, right? People watch Homer Simpson, that's all they know how to do. They can't sit there and listen to you and then reply to you and ask a question, etc., etc. It's just one-sided. And it's very frustrating because, and I see that over the years with my family members to the point where I just gave up on them. It's pointless talking to them. It's truly pointless, right? Because they're so complacent. They watch TV like it's, they got nothing else to go, nowhere to go, nothing to do, they're watching that TV. They're watching CNN or even worse, CBS or CBC or BBC. The most insidious propaganda machines. And you can't have a conversation with them. You can't get their attention if the TV is on, first off. They're like, shh. and they don't have any kind of self-worth. They don't see themselves as important, but everybody's so friggin' important, they don't understand it. But the indoctrination machine, the schools, and particularly journalists and disgusting scientists, whose entire legacy is about wrecking your ability to perceive or understand or comprehend or even have a conversation, just a normal conversation without getting upset and angry and mad. And they don't know why they're doing it. They don't understand. But it's built into them through the propaganda machine itself. It's not their fault. There's hope for everybody. Even with the obvious downplaying involvement of people who have publicly admitted, their goal is to dismiss and downplay the health damages of the disaster. Their goal, their job is to dismiss and downplay the health damages. Imagine your job is to go out and destroy the victims. That's your job. When you can get a job that pays more money somewhere else, you take that job because you suffer the same flaws as the rest of the victims. And I have the unfortunate pleasures of knowing a couple of people that are professors that I grew up with that are now professors, and that they were the most dysfunctional people imaginable. And they went to university, got multiple degrees, but they wouldn't leave and go get a job. And they were offered big jobs. The university offered them job teaching because they were the perfect tool to fuck over the students. Even with the obvious downplaying involvement of people who publicly admitted, their goal is to dismiss and downplay the health damages of the disaster. So this should be the death penalty for these people. Immediately, they should bring back, with the consensus, of course, with a referendum, bring back public executions as an incentive to rein in this despicable industry known as nuclear. It's a despicable industry. 76% of the children in Noho Matsu were over the 1 millisievert, 1,000 microsieverts external, not internal. How can you be in an area with 1,000 microsieverts and not be breathing it in? Because the microsieverts that they're acknowledging is far below the numbers that are actually there. But you're not near the reactor where you're getting gamma shines and X-rays and neutrons and beta rays and and alphas. It's radioactive fallout far away, and then they're counting that as gamma shines and X-rays. But this is airborne also, so you're breathing it in. So why would you look at external exposures because that's how evil works. It's done this for 80 years. And the universities are full of these people that are crying to get these jobs. They know the jobs exist. They go get incredible education to get a job to come out and lie to you. And I know that might sound incredible to some people, but it's not incredible to anybody that's been around for very long. This becomes very evident that that's how the whole system actually works. It's full of academics that got an education to get the job to come out and lie to you. And only the worst scumbags imaginable will get the job. Only the most degenerate scumbags will be allowed to work in the industry. The most degenerate of the degenerate monsters are the ones who will be allowed to work at your universities and the nuclear industry, on TV as journalists. In a new data release, this does not include their internal exposures. Why would you only study external doses in a nuclear wasteland? Simply just to cover it up. I mean, but imagine what kind of evil, degenerate piece of shit you got to be to work in that environment to take that job. Imagine what kind of worthless piece of shit you got to be to get that job. You got to get that job or go to work at YouTube, right? Censoring people. This World Health Organization document also appears to only look at cancer, and cancer is not the only health damage that occurs with radiation exposure. There's heart problems, liver problems, lung problems, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline, Alzheimer's, dementia, autism, diabetes, Down syndrome, schizophrenia. And let's take a poll for a second. I got 14 likes. Because they don't like that at all, do they? I got 21 votes and 22 viewers. Bless your hearts. I'm surprised they let me have that many viewers. They must be on a coffee break. Snorting uranium isotopes. Fukushima Health Study did dose reconstruction for a very small number of people. And like, if you took any of the people at YouTube that are censoring me and try to bring them to Fukushima, they would murder you to get away from that. You could not, they would scream their heads off if they thought they were going to go to Fukushima. Even the prefecture, you couldn't get them into the prefecture. The people that are censoring me on YouTube, for instance. They know the difference. They know they're monsters. They're at peace with that. That's who they are. They know they're monsters. They have no illusions. And every one of their friends knows they're monsters that they grew up with. They say, yeah, that's a piece of shit. Fukushima Health Survey did dose reconstruction. I mean, they had to pick their way through 30 million one-ton bags. Did you hear what I said? 30 million one-ton bags? They had to pick their way through 30 million one-ton bags to do a health survey. Imagine going past millions of one-ton bags to do a survey so they come out and hoodwink you. Because that's what they're doing, right? You got 30 million one-ton bags. You got abandoned communities. And you're doing a health survey and you don't see that a single time. You don't question that a single time. You don't think there's anything strange about that. How can you go past 30 million one-ton bags of radiation and pretend it's irrelevant? How does that actually work? Because they do it all the time. We've been looking at it for years and years and years. Other researchers began to do their own dose reconstruction, found much higher exposure levels than the health survey did, and were quickly pressured to stop their work. The World Health Organization's position paper is based on information they obtained from the Fukushima Medical University. And Fukushima government and the Fukushima Medical University signed a Secrecy Pact with the International Atomic Energy Agency. The World Health Organization is not a World Health Organization. They're just a little tiny subsidy of the International Atomic, or the United Nations, like IAEA is, like UNSCLEAR, like IRPA, like the IPRC, like the International Atomic Energy Agencies. They're all just the same organization. And they have been weaponized for so long with there's no resistance to them. I'm sure there's a couple out there, but there's very little resistance. And if you argue their narrative, typically you will be blocked on social medias. Oxford physicist, you know who the frig that is, Wade Allison, said raise the radiation limits by 100,000%. That radiation safety at the expense of mental health and community well-being is unjustified. In order to make a statement, this is a professor who's retired, a British physicist who taught nuclear for 30 years at Oxford, one of the most prestigious universities, and he's the worst nuclear crank you can conceive. He's the worst human imaginable. I had made a number of videos on my other sites. Should Wade Allison students get their money back and have to be recertified? Now, all these years later, they shouldn't get their money back, and they should be immediately banned from any position in the nuclear industry because clearly they're monsters. If you went through Wade Allison's 4-year university, you are, by every sense of the word, a monster. That's all he produces is monster. It's unconscionable that people like that are given a platform. These are the worst humans imaginable. He's produced several books since he retired on Fukushima, and his narrative got nothing to do with science, and he's a professor. And so over the years, what we discovered was our biggest nightmare every single time. There's two different types. There's a professor and journalist. And every one of them, when it comes to nuclear, are going to cut your throat. Every one of them, no exceptions. So how the hell did we ever get to the position where your worst enemy was a scientist, your worst enemy is a journalist? But the corruption of the nuclear industry seems to know no bounds, does it? So think about this statement right here. I talked about this, I think, in the last week, the last video, Thursday. Nuclear waste being processed during an explosion in France had radioactivity of 17 atoms a kilogram. 17 atoms a kilogram. So the Cesium-137 plume gas, according to France, who was packaging 17 atoms a kilogram for a nuclear dump, model from the IRSN, which is the government model, showed radiation spiked by 1 million to 10 million atoms per cubic meter of air. So if you're taking 17 atoms per kilogram and putting it in a nuclear waste site, and you produce a model showing 1 million to 10 million atoms of cesium-137 alone, it can't just be cesium, then you're supposed to abandon the United States and Canada. Not maybe, but you're guaranteed to wipe out all the insects, the birds, the mammals, the animals, and humans. You're guaranteed. And it takes a few decades to play out. And so now we're on our way to this. We're 13 years down the road. And think about this statement right here. Cesium-137 immediately damages the heart muscle. You got 1 million to 10 million atoms or more per cubic meter of air alone of just cesium, which pulses energy to 600 feet. And how many times now have you heard of people just randomly dying of heart attacks? Young people too. And if you look at the statistics, there's an explosion. Well, this is the plume model based on 16 days of radioactive fallout of the cesium-137 at 1 million to 10 million atoms per cubic meter of air. And it's covering the entire planet. That's day 16 right there. And it's not just cancer. It's not just heart attacks. There's liver, lung, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline. When you get radiation, and this kind of radiation we're talking about, this is quantified, by the way, through academic studies. There was 20 million atoms of iodine-131 per liter. There was 10 times more 132, and 30 times more 133, 31 times more iodine-129, which was backed up in a study from Ottawa, Canada, at 220 million atoms per liter, and another study from west coast of Canada at 20 million atoms of iodine 131 per liter. The 132 to 133 are 9 times more effective at ionizing and radiating the thyroid glands than the incredible effect of 131. And then you got studies like this. You got studies on the xenon. You got studies on the sulfur peroxide hydrogen buckyballs. You got studies on an absurd amount of documented radioactive fallout. And then everybody thinks that, what, it's going to turn to fairy dust? It's just going to go away. It's not going to be assimilated in every facet. And there's not going to be no adverse side effects from it? Really? Because your God, I mean, your TV didn't tell you it would? And what the academic community and the journalists have done to us, how do we reconcile that? How do we pretend that didn't happen? How do we look them in the face without spitting? I know I can't. Fukushima government, Fukushima Medical University signed a secrecy pact with the International Atomic Energy Agency. Tokyo Shimbun, which is a media, has confirmed that the government entities did sign a secrecy agreement with the degenerate piece of shit known as the International Atomic Energy Agency. And that the Fukushima Medical University, like the worst humans imaginable, work at that place, obviously, have been the main source of all public data on exposures and been dictating what the medical care many in the region were allowed to receive related to the radiation issues. Why is that place not burnt to the ground? Why didn't the Japanese burn it to the ground, sir? Because that would have been an appropriate thing to do, wouldn't it? Nuclear establishment takes over Fukushima Medical University, February 20th, 2014. More agreements have been linked between the Fukushima Medical University International Nuclear Mafia. Truly, one of your worst enemies imaginable is the journalists. They're the reasons that the nuclear industry is getting away with everything. Why are they getting a free ride? Why isn't the world holding a journalist? In fact, shouldn't we get rid of shouldn't we create journalists? We need to get rid of the current ones, every one of them, and actually create a journalism and then a monitoring system that monitors all their emails, all their phone calls to make sure they're not going to stab you in the back the minute you blink. Because they will. The worst humans are journalists and academics. I'm not saying that to be mean. I'm saying that because that's a fucking fact. High exposures found in some evacuees. No, in all of them. 5 people at 50,000 microsieverts of equivalent dose, and another person with 89,000 microsieverts, and another one with 77,000 microsieverts. These are catastrophic numbers. And you don't measure the doses of a human with microsieverts. You measure it in physical atoms, also known as Becquerels, which is an explosion. So the Becquerel is an explosion, and that happens every second for each atom. So 89,000 microsieverts, take 89,000, multiply it by 750, and then that's how many explosions goes on in the body every second. Their body has to attack every one of those explosions for the rest of their life with white blood cells. And not only that, the explosions are damaging chromosomes and DNA in cells, so the body has to try to repair that every single second. It can't keep up with it. It does that with the white blood cells that are produced in your joints and in your spleen. And using millisieverts, like there should be a bunch of bodybuilders out there that descend upon the academics or scientists when they put out this propaganda and tear their arms and legs off. I don't mean physically tear their arms and legs off. While the government is proclaiming everyone's safe and no potential bad health outcome, 865,000 cancers in the first year. Actual radiation tests like these are ignored and shuffled off to no man's land. We already covered that, didn't we? Yeah, so scientists you generally get painted these types of pictures, right? Stoic and there just to work on science. They're there to cover up whatever the nuclear industry is up to next. You know, what was really interesting was here in Canada, scientists were banned from having a interview with anybody unless they went through Stephen Harper's office, and then Stephen Harper would send in a list of questions and answers. And so then they would give that to the journalist. The journalist would ask only those questions, and the scientist was only allowed to call or repeat those answers that they were given to by Stephen Harper, which was the idiot moron Prime Minister of Canada at that particular time. And at one point, several years later, after Fukushima, scientists and academics across Canada went out on a silent protest. And what they done was they took pots and pans. They weren't yelling, hey, hey, or whatever. They were just hitting pots and pans walking down the road to protest the fact that, and they didn't understand allegedly why they weren't allowed to do what they normally do, was interviews and stuff, right? But that was because the Canadian government is as pro-nuclear as it gets. It's so pro-nuclear, it's despicable, really. And Canada removed restrictions, all restrictions on the food from the nuclear wasteland that was imposed by 55 countries and 14 prefectures. And each prefecture, of course, is massive. And it's about half the country of Japan, where the food was rejected by 55 countries. They replaced the people in positions of authority in those countries to remove the restrictions over a 10-year period. Currently, there's around 14 countries still have restrictions. But they're symbiotic. The Fukushima Medical University has been the main source of all public data, of all things. Both the prefecture and the medical university have been the subject of growing distrust and the public due to their efforts to downplay problems, withhold information from the public. Downplay problems, withhold information from the public. Like when they say the word downplay the problems, that's not what they're doing. They're blatantly lying. They're not downplaying. They're blatantly lying to everybody, equating lethal doses with bananas and potato chips. The Memorandum of Understanding with the degenerate International Atomic Energy Agency in December of last year, Fukushima Prefecture, were signed respectively in October of that year, and that story was from 2014. A scientist is the first person to cut your throat after a nuclear accident, followed by the journalists who interviewed him, and every government agency. And the only way they can get away with it is with all universities participating in the lie and all journalists participating in the lie. That's the only way they're going to get away with it. And clearly that's what happened. And another problem with the radioactive fallout that people refuse to allow to enter their brain, which I don't understand it, is pretending that radiation, that they're immune to radioactive fallout. It gets in your thyroid, you're producing radioactive hormones for the rest of your life. If it's doing that in your thyroid, then it's also going to be in your skeleton, so it's producing radioactive stem cells for the rest of your life. How can the world be this complacent? How can the world be so uncaring? How can the world sit in silence? How can the world pretend that this is not an issue when this is clearly... When you look at 10,350 gray whales over the last number of years that showed up emaciated, and you're going to, blame that on the fucking bird flu? You stupid pieces of shit. You got 7,000 extra humpback whales showed up emaciated after a mortality event where there was thousands. There was an extra 7,000 out of that. They died of starvation. You really think that was the fucking bird flu? You got a mortality event for fin whales, for blue whales, for pilot whales, for beak whales. I mean, you had over 1,000 in 1 year show up in the British, which never seen even there before, shows up in the British coastlines in different stages of decomposition, which means around 10,000 must have died. For every one that you find, at least 9 or 10 sink that you didn't see. millions of birds. You had, at one point, when I was on the research expeditions for 5 months on the Pacific Ocean, there was 1 million common murres. They dive 600 feet all day. They feed on anchovies and squid and sardines and krill and small, 8, 9, 10-inch fish. But at the same time, there was 1.4 million Cassini auklets. And they're microscopic feeders. They feed on zooplankton, phytoplankton, very microscopic animals. So you had two different spectrums of the food chain showing up emaciated over thousands of miles of coastline, which meant the food chain was unequivocally broken. There's no way to deny that. And that the health effects clearly now are going to be, not trickle, but cascade into the populations of every species. You can't have one without the 8 million others. There was a secret language specified in the memorandum. This is United Nations, a military-industrial complex, conspiring with the government to downplay, to lie about every facet of the radiation so that the nuclear industry can maintain its death grip on humanity, make sure that there's no way humanity can survive. And because it's a slow kill, because it's very sneaky, there's heart problems, liver problems that'll kill you, lung problems, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline, Alzheimer's, dementia, autism, diabetes, Down syndrome. There's all these diseases from the radiation poisoning, and they don't say caused by radiation. But when you cover the information, if you go look at my studies, my presentations with nothing but studies on, say, Chernobyl's anniversary last year and this year, there's around 1,200 studies there. Studies. And the idea that was, I just flooded study, another study, so you can comprehend the different facets that they study. So you can see that it infiltrates every facet of the biosphere and the ecosystem. Every fucking facet of it. In fact, let me give you an example. I'm just going to put that picture there so I can find my way back to it. And this is a remarkable way to learn about radiation. Just bear with me. I got a really neat way of showing that. Let me see if I can get lucky enough to find it. That really conveys what I'm trying to say. Just give me one more chance here. I screwed that up already. Why is it so friggin' hard? Why is it so hard to be honest? I wonder for scientists and academics, because the nuclear industry, there we go. Yeah, I know I set this up so it'd be easy for me to find it, and yet I'm struggling. It wasn't that long ago that we set that up, was it? So we can find it. Yeah, here we go. Let's do some of it. I just think that when I show this stuff that everybody would get it right away. And so I've done it quite a lot over the last decade in particular. And I think it's just because I'm desperate for people to come to their senses. Maybe I'm just a fucking weirdo because I give a fuck. Transfer of cesium and iodine from flowers to honey and pollen. Do you wonder why there's no bees anymore? Radio contamination data collected in Italy. Radionuclides in vegetation, cow's milk. Agricultural countermeasures in Chernobyl. You can't like make a countermeasure to stop food from uptaking radiation. You put 200 million atoms in the head of a needle, you can't see it. How are you supposed to stop that from being assimilated into the food? Chernobyl fallout detected in the BC seaweed. The variability is Chernobyl cesium retention in the water columns of lakes in English Lake District 2 and 4 years after disposition in the United Kingdom. They actually closed 9,400 farms in Ireland, Scotland, United Kingdom post-Chernobyl because it's like a banana, right? Long-range transport of iodine-131 and other regular nuclides from Fukushima. Transports of iodine-131 through the gas cow milk pathway at the northeast U.S. dairy following Chernobyl. So they don't do all these studies because they're bored. They cost a lot of money, right? And contamination of food in Czechoslovakia, which meant the water is contaminated too. You can't just contaminate the food without contaminating the air and the water, which means you should have abandoned not only United Kingdom, Ireland, and Scotland, but Czechoslovakia, obviously. Chernobyl followed Shakespeare Bay. Well, how does it get into the bay? It washes down to the coastlines, ends up in the bay, which meant the whole Shakespeare area was incredibly contaminated. Pregnancy outcome in Sweden after Chernobyl. So why are they doing studies like that? Contamination of Australia's soil with cesium. Well, why would you suggest there's only cesium-137? How could you even suggest for 1 second that it's cesium-137? Without all the other cesium-137 in purchase in Sweden. They actually closed the freshwater fishery in Sweden for 30 years post-Chernobyl. Because of Fukushima, they said, fuck it, and just removed the restrictions. Transport of cesium, americium, plutonium isotopes in lagoons in the Baltic Seas. And when you see these blue names there, they make a lot of money. They have to pay mortgages. Their children have music lessons, soccer lessons, private schools. The list goes on. They need dental and health care. They got to make a lot of money. And they do these studies. Chernobyl fallout in Finland, hot areas. A hot area is where you're going to get sick and die later from it. Chernobyl fallout in Finland, hot areas. Long-term variations post-Chernobyl, strontium, cesium, plutoniums, concentrations in the air, disposition to the ground, resuspension factors, resuspension rates in South Germany. Well, forest fires will liberate radiation from 80 years ago because it never goes away. You can't destroy it in a fire. Does the fact nuclear scientists and journalists lied about every facet of Fukushima meltdown concern you? Somebody accidentally said no, but if they said yes on purpose, no on purpose, because they're fucking stupid or they're pro-nuclear scumbag. And that's what pro-nuclear is. You're a scumbag. If you're pro-nuclear, you're not stupid. You're just a fucking scumbag. Iodine-131 and other radionuclides environmental samples collected from Ibaraki, Japan after Chernobyl, 1987. Thyroid radiation doses in Britain from Chernobyl, 3,000 kilometers away. Remember, they closed 9,400 farms. So, I'm just trying to show you, they do all of these studies because radiation contaminates everything. And then people they refuse to put they refuse to put that in their mind and say, okay, well, that happened. They're like, who cares? They refuse to put that in their mind. Now here's documentary. Here's the documents of it everywhere, showing up everywhere. Ionizing radiation, human gender proportions at birth. So, what they do is they do sex ratio studies where they look at, is there more males than females born in Europe post-Chernobyl, because everybody in Europe got contaminated. And then the results from that is that there's more females being born than males, which means less population. The propagation of Chernobyl 131, and women are born with all their eggs, and their eggs are going to be sterilized. Propagation of Chernobyl 131 iodine impulse through the eargrass animal milk pathway northwest Greece. Sexual dysfunction in Chernobyl. And Chernobyl, they basically only studied external doses. Radioactivity in breast milk after Chernobyl. Transport of iodine and cesium from air to cow's milk produced northwestern Italian farms. So, like, they're doing all of these studies because everything was irradiated. But the official story is that there's only a 30-kilometer exclusion zone. Radiation didn't damage anything. But determination of cesium in the water system of pre-alpine lake, which is France, right? Hotspots after the glaciers started melting. Lethal hotspots. Analysis of radioactivity levels in soil and crops from South Italy after Chernobyl. Anthropogenic cesium and atmospheric aerosols in Slovakia around the nuclear power plants. Distribution in the North Seas. Sustained excess in females in Colombia. Geographical analysis of thyroid cancers in young people from northern England is post-Chernobyl. Like, all of these studies, this is just a fraction. I have one folder there with 1,900 studies, and it's specific, where every study is a different part of the ecosystem. And so when you go through, and you see that in my Chernobyl presentations, when you're looking at that, what you come to the realization is this contaminates every facet of the biosphere. And pretending that it doesn't matter to you, or pretending that you're not capable of learning, or pretending that it never even happened, stuff like that, there's no excuse for that. There is no fucking excuse for that whatsoever. It's not very hard to learn, but people just refuse because of indoctrination by the idiot machine we call the TV. Studies of iodine and cesiums in milk and meat and vegetables and rubidium. Why would you study that anyway when you got all the other nasty isotopes? Because that's what you can get money for. It's easier to get money for that than it is for plutonium or americium or neptunium or curium, which is the biggest byproduct of radiated fuel rods. Northeast Scotland following Chernobyl. Calculations of the individual effective doses equivalent in Italy following Chernobyl. So, like, for England, like, because I can show you studies from every one of these major countries you're looking at of Chernobyl and Fukushima, where everything gets blanketed with perpetual radioactive fallout. I'm just going to flash through these. I'm not going to bother trying to read through them all. They're not doing all of these studies because it's like a banana and a potato chip or walking in the sunshine or climbing a mountain or flying on a fucking airplane. They're doing it because it's real nasty stuff. And that study there, colored rain dust from the Sahara Desert is still radioactive from the idiot French, the moron, the dipstick French. What they done to the Sahara Desert and to the French Polynesian Islands was equal to a Nagasaki bomb every week for 12 fucking years. And even today, they refuse to acknowledge there are any adverse side effects. But all these studies, not doing all these studies because there's no adverse side effects. They're doing all these studies because there's nothing but adverse side effects. And the majority of these studies, by the way, are meant to downplay these specific adverse side effects, to justify throwing every one of these victims under the bus. And the academic community proudly participates in the betrayal. And ultimately, they betray themselves, their friends, their families, their loved ones, their parents, their children, everybody. Because nobody's fucking immune from this. Study on plutonium isotopes determined in the soil. You can't keep up with it, can you? You actually can't keep up with this stuff. I can take you through all of it, but I'm not going to. Let's get through this. Let's get back into the show recovering. It's horrifying that the world refuses to acknowledge this. It's not that easy. Because how can you look at all of this and then pretend that it doesn't fucking matter. How does that work? I don't fucking do this because it's easy. And then people might hear me swear and they get offended because they swear, what the fuck is wrong with you to get offended because you heard me swear? Like you didn't swear when you were growing up, for instance, or your friends and your parents and your loved ones don't swear. Get fucking real. Stop being a zombie for the fucking industry. I swear sometimes to try to break through the disconnect that people have. And because what I'm talking about is fucking real. The intellectual development, mental and behavioral disorders in children from Belarus that were in the womb following Chernobyl. Why are you doing studies like that? Why are you doing all of these studies? Because the radioactive fallout justifies it, quantifies it. And a lot of, like I said, a lot of these studies are to downplay it. But this is just a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a percent of the actual studies that I got. You know, maybe because I do this all day, every day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, year after year after year, that I see it as an issue. But when you look at all these studies and you think that you're fucking immune from this? You think this is not going to destroy your loved ones no matter where you're to on this planet? That's not denial, that's fucking stupid. Playing ignorance because it's convenient for you instead of getting educated. And it's not that big of a deal to get educated on this topic. Go to my playlist and you will find so much information. It's stunning. I got it so much I can overwhelm any academic on the planet. They can't come here and do a debate because we'll gut them right on the spot. And and when you see therapeutic radiation, do you got any idea what they're doing to your loved ones in the hospital? There's a 2% survival rate or something. When they go in and they jam all this fucking radiation into you, you have a 2% chance of coming out of that and living 5 years. You could have lived 10 or 15 years if you didn't go fucking near these idiots. I don't understand why it's so convenient to people to refuse to get educated. I don't understand that. If you ask them a quiz, if you write down 20 questions about The Simpsons, the average person will get every fucking one of them right. You ask them 20 questions about nuclear, the average person will tell you to fuck off. I don't want to learn that. Why do I want to learn that? Because you were indoctrinated by Simpsons and you don't even know good from bad anymore. You're a moron. Potential global catastrophe from Fukushima Unit 2 highly radioactive fuel. Reactor could be destroyed. This is February 12, 2017, for fuck's sakes. Reactor making Tokyo area uninhabitable. You picked up 30 million one-ton bags in Fukushima Prefecture. You don't need to know any more than that. If that's not enough evidence for you, it's because you're a fucking idiot. Like, you're a fucking idiot. When 30 million one-ton bags don't convince you that there's a fucking issue, you're a fucking idiot. There is nothing could help you. So Unit 3 fucking blew up and contaminated the entire planet within 26 days. But it's convenient to talk about Reactor 2 because Reactor 2 doesn't look destroyed. Reactor 2 looks like it's still fucking intact. But if you look at the heat signature up there, it's 100% meltdown. The reactors actually ejected the reactor core and the fuel pools directly out of the fucking buildings. We've never even heard tell of anything like this before. Nuclear establishment takes over Fukushima Medical University. Nuclear establishment. More agreements have been inked between the Fukushima Medical University and International Nuclear Mafia. These are not nuclear mafias per se. These are just idiots that got jobs in the nuclear industry. These are morons. Great education, but they're fucking morons. You talk to any of these people, and after you're going to say, fuck, that's a fucking moron. Nuclear's fucking full of morons. It's hard to find anybody in the nuclear industry who's not a fucking moron. Fukushima Medical University signed an agreement with the ICRP, International Committee on Radiation Protection, which is United Nations. IAEA is United Nations. UNSCLEAR, United Nations. ICRP, International Atomic Energy Agency, IRPA, UNSCLEAR. These are... And they all back each other up. No, well, they agree with us, but they're all the same organizations. Like, if I start up 5 organizations, they all agree with me. Does that mean I got a consensus? Of course not. That means I hoodwinked whoever fucking watched the presentation, right? I gaslighted. I basically murdered them by making them incapable of defending themselves from... the number one thing is you don't buy anything from Japan or the United Kingdom. Fukushima Medical, because they ship it to the United Kingdom, relabel it, and ship it to your country. Fukushima Medical University is also creating visiting professor positions for IAEA staff, right, to indoctrinate the victims in the school. Well, the Fukushima Medical University has been busy denying the health risk from the nuclear disaster. The prefectural government signed a deal to cooperate and purchase cancer treatment equipment from Germany. Your universities and your media, they hate your fucking guts. They don't even know what it is to be a human, none of them. They get the job because they're degenerate monsters. They're no emotions whatsoever. They're incompetent and incapable of doing anything without being told. They're zombies. And so the industry will snatch them up and weaponize them against you because it's really simple. And they love autistic people because they won't argue with anybody. They'll just do whatever they're told, including genocide the entire fucking country with radiation. Food. Japan takes South Korea to the World Trade Organization over Fukushima food bans. Well, you picked up 30 million one-ton fucking bags. But then the World Trade Organization is weaponized to stop you from avoiding poisoning your population. Of course, South Korea won that debate, or lost that debate. It took, then they appealed it, took 2 more years, and then the World Trade Organization sided with South Korea. By the way, the biggest donor to IAEA, which is just one of the many subsidies of the degenerate UN, is the 3rd biggest donor to United Nations, is Japan. So Japan takes South Korea to the World Trade Organization over Fukushima food ban, because South Korea banned the food from quite a lot of places. But all South Korea's got to do is show that picture here. Look, they picked up 30 million one-ton bags. There's 150,000 sites like this. So everything's contaminated. You only picked up 3% of the topsoil, and which is like 2 centimeters. How the fuck do you scrape up less than 1 inch of the topsoil? How does that work? Anybody know how that works? Can you go out and scrape up less than 1 inch of your topsoil anywhere on this fucking planet? No. And this is what they had. All they had people doing was going $28 billion, and now they're chopping up the bags and growing food in it because everybody is so stupid. They just sit in silence and let them get away with it. I can't comprehend it. I mean, they're so fucking evil. They're growing food right alongside of 1-ton bags of radiation, and nobody even comes out and complains. This is a picture from the mainstream media saying that the farmers got to make a living. What? Fucking poisoning everybody worldwide. So you got, like, your biggest enemy is a scientist, nuclear journalist, and the fucking farmers that are growing food in nuclear wasteland, right alongside of 1-ton bags of radiation. How do you get that stupid? How can you drive a machine, be smart enough to tie your own fucking shoes, drive a machine, and not understand that growing food alongside of 1-ton bags of radiation is insane? How does that actually work? How does that work, though? How can you be there harvesting food? And you can't live there. You got to come in there, drive past millions of 1-ton bags, harvest the food, send it to the market. How can you do that and be a human at the same time? Like, I lose faith in humanity every time I see stuff like this. That there is people out there that are so fucking stupid that they're growing food in a nuclear wasteland. They're harvesting food right alongside of 1-ton bags of radiation. And the mainstream media puts this up and justifies it. And then the Japanese will come out and say they got $1 billion to spend on advertisement to break the bad reputation that Japan's got. And they call it unfounded reputation damage. But you're growing food in a nuclear wasteland, you fucking piece of shit. You moron. You stupid nobody. You despicable monster. How can you grow food in a nuclear fucking wasteland? Oh, here you go. I descended into cursing and swearing. That's not going to get us anywhere. Japan's argument has been that food produced in the country's intervention limit for radiation contamination, citing government food testing programs. These programs involved only spot testing of the product. I mean, here's another picture, grown food in a nuclear wasteland. And there's not a fucking media out there criticized it. Nowhere. I can't comprehend that kind of complacency. I don't understand why we don't covet life. Why do we covet something? Why do we covet these shit brains anyway? Why don't we be honest for a change? Food produced that are not tested are routinely exported. Radioactive rain caused 130 schools in South Korea to close, yet the rain in California had 10 times more. Oh, it was a lot worse than that. By the way, South Korea in 2013 had shipped back over 6 million pounds of radioactive seafood. 6 million pounds of radioactive seafood. 6 million fucking pounds. 6 million pounds. From South Korea. Japan took South Korea to the World Trade Organization because they banned food from the nuclear wasteland, which was the appropriate thing to do. The current administration, of course, in South Korea are fucking goblins. They're actual goblins. I'm just shocked that the world is willing to lie down and let these people fucking vomit all over you until you drown in their vomit. Because that's what you're doing, basically. Water storage tanks at Fukushima Daiichi at risk of explosion. Water storage. Filter waste containers stored at Fukushima Daiichi are at risk of having hydrogen explosions. So that's a forklift lifting up a pallet with 2 containers in it. They say it's got nuclear waste in it from the sludge at the bottom of the tanks. That's simply not possible. Because you're pouring water over a melted reactor core, detonations and everything else, and melted fuel pools. that water is picking up fuel particulates. If you did put it in the tank, it's going to settle in the tank. You're going to have a criticality in the bottom of the tank, like they did at Mayak, like they did at Hanford. And it's going to burn a hole, and everything is just going to run out. Not leak out, run out. And so this is all fake, because we know it's fake because those containers need to be at least 6 feet thick of lead. And so the forklift driver would have died. And we know they're not putting it into the tanks, because if you fill up one of these tanks with water that you poured over a melted reactor core, you're talking about multi-million sieverts per tank, which means you can't build another tank on the site. Piece of shit Mary Yamaguchi. What a disgusting maggot that person turned out to be. August the 20th, 2013, Fukushima had 1,000 tanks. You know how many tanks they got today? Is 1,000 tanks. And all of those tanks were filled in 2013. Does the fact that nuclear scientists and journalists lied about every facet of Fukushima nuclear meltdown concern you? Let me see what I got done here. Bear with me. What the hell am I looking for? Yeah, just hang out. I got something here for you. Oh yeah, I know it's now. Bear with me. I know how to find it. Sometimes I'm the big trick with what I'm doing. The big trick with what I do is you have proper search term, right? Japan. The best way to describe the BBC is insane monsters, isn't it? What they done
The Fukushima plant sits smack in the middle of an
Oh, let me go back here. The wrong one. So this was 2013. This was Rupert Winfield Hayes with the BBC. I'm going to start this again. Now, what you're looking at is fake, right? They superimposed this over Reactor 4. There is no scaffolding built there. There are no people stood up there. You can't survive in that environment.
The Fukushima plant sits smack in the middle of an underground aquifer. Deep beneath the ground, the site is rapidly being overwhelmed by water. Beneath the surface, water flows downhill and into the basement of the damaged reactor buildings. There it is contaminated with high levels of radiation. To stop the groundwater flowing on into the nearby ocean, engineers are building an underground barrier. But that is causing the groundwater level to rapidly rise. It's now so high the water will soon reach the surface. Then it will start flowing overground into the sea. This week, the company that owns Fukushima, TEPCO, made this disturbing admission.
We understand that this water discharge is beyond our control, and we do not think the current situation is good.
Outside experts say it's now clear TEPCO is incapable of handling the cleanup at Fukushima. It's time for the Japanese government to step in. The situation is already beyond what TEPCO can handle, he says. If it were possible to take proper measures, they would have done it already. It's not as if TEPCO is refusing to do what they can. They're doing everything they can, but there are no perfect solutions. Even if the government does step in, it's not clear what it can do. The only other solution is to pump out the contaminated groundwater and put it in storage tanks. But after just 2 years, the site is already jammed with more than 1,000 giant tanks. Most of them are already full up. At least 400 tons of new water pours into the site every day, and it's going to continue for years and years. Fukushima's water crisis has only just begun. Rupert Wingfield-Hayes, BBC News in Tokyo.
Yeah, and what you're seeing, where am I to here? Like, they're saying all the tanks were filled in 2013, right? All the tanks were filled in 2013. Which meant, how could you, when the water filtration system, just wait, I'm looking for it. Here it is. The AREVA system is February 11, 2013. The images were from 2013, so they were just building the ELP system, rather, the so-called water filtration system. But let's skip ahead to 2014 in August. In August, they still hadn't got it built. So what they're saying was the tanks were full of highly contaminated water that they poured over a reactor core. You can't build another tank there alongside of a tank full of this kind of water. It's not filtered. All the tanks were full, none of it's filtered. There is no filtration system. And you can't filter radioactive water like this because the atoms are all the same size. So, right, so the isotope, the anthropogenic man-made atoms are the same size as natural ones. How can you distinguish between the two of them? Because it can't be done, is what I'm trying to say. Okay, let me come back down. Like, every nuclear scientist has seen this picture and knew the reactors were gone and the fuel pools were gone right away. As soon as he's seen it, every one of them. So why didn't they warn us? So a couple of years later, reactor 4 looked like that. The fuel pools are at the top of the building, the reactor core is at the top of the building. So why didn't any academic on the freaking planet come out and say the fuel pool was gone? Unequivocally, this is unassailable documentation, what you're looking at. Any academic today will look at it and tell you the fuel pool's gone, the reactor's gone, but they didn't. So what does that mean? That means that the academic community is exterminating you on purpose. And themselves, they're so complacent. They're not stupid, they're not naive, they're just evil. So when you say that in 2013, that you got 1,000 tanks, you got Rupert Wingfield-Hayes from the BBC there with TEPCO acknowledging all the tanks were full in 2013, which means they didn't fill any tanks since 2013. So where the fuck do you think all the water went? The tanks were empty. You can't fill the tanks up with the radiation from a nuclear meltdown. It simply can't be done. It's too radioactive. You can't build another tank, and you can't walk past the tank. We're going to have to pick up there tomorrow night because I don't like it when I start getting upset and angry, because I'll say stuff. I'm not very good at being nice to the nuclear industry as it is. And it's just going to get worse if I stay here. And I don't think I should continue anyway, because I'm still fucking recovering. And it's no fun anyway doing what I'm doing. There's no joy in the things I'm doing. I'm just here in desperation, trying to wake up this planet. Trying to have a conversation. Trying to educate a population. It's hellish. And I wouldn't have it any other way. It wouldn't change a fucking thing in the context of, I don't regret the work. I don't regret the relentless hours and time and energy and effort at all. I just regret the fact that we're not allowed to have a debate, and that the people that are controlling or censoring us are the most cowardly people conceivable, the most ruthless monsters, literally monsters in every sense of the word, that I've ever heard tell of. I don't know. I can't find a story of a worse monster than somebody who censors you and the pro-nuclear community. I can't find a worse monster than that. I can't find a more evil entity than these people. These are the most egregious, atrocious, sadistic, vicious, hateful, cowardly scums you're ever going to encounter. And that is more scary than everything put together. That people like that actually exist. That cowards like that are in positions to make decisions. That is fucking frightening. If you made it this far, consider giving me a thumbs up. I don't give a shit anyway, but consider giving me a thumb up. Hopefully tomorrow night when I come back, I'll calm down a bit. Let's come over and close the poll down. We got a good poll tonight. Does the fact that nuclear scientists and journalists lied about every facet of Fukushima meltdowns concern you? It should be frighten you is what it should have been, but I put concern you. I'm trying to be politically correct because I kind of knew yesterday that, because I was so upset with the nuclear industry yesterday with let me come back and talk about that for a second. On Friday, there was China announced that they're going to start importing food from Fukushima, right? Post the alleged releases that started August 24th, 2023. That was the cover story. We've covered it extensively and constantly. But yesterday, Friday, they came out and announced it, and there was like 8 pages of just China and Japan, China and Fukushima. There's 8 pages of news in the cycle. And every story on each page was that headline. And I read every one of them and gathered it all up, and I got a folder. And somewhere in the next little while, we're going to start covering the recent research expeditions, where I covered 3,000 kilometers of coastline, where I covered 100 communities, where we covered 1,100 ponds, and we never found anything. It's truly an extinction event, and that's just a fraction of the research that we've done over the years, obviously. But I mean, that's frightening. 1,100 ponds with not a single fish jumping in a single pond. And it was beautiful conditions too, right? It was like 90 degrees each day and no winds. It was horrifying. If you make it this far, don't forget to give us a thumbs up or not. It doesn't matter. I don't even care. And I do care about you, and I do care the fact that you found your way here tonight, and I do appreciate it. I'm very grateful that you showed up here. I'm very proud of each and every one of you, and I covet the fact that you had the common sense and the fortitude and the courage to come and listen to another narrative that wasn't propaganda. And I know that the information that I bring is very difficult. Believe me, I know. And Kevin Blanche says on October the 1st he'll be out doing the tide pools again in California. He's going to go down and just be bored out of his trees because he's not going to find any colors there. He's not going to find any species there. But you got to document it, right? You still got to go document it. Okay, we're going to close it down with a song we've been playing a lot lately. This is one of James Luce's songs. And there's a lot of artists out there, and they produce songs, right? And they can't go back and change the songs once they release their songs. But a lot of these songs that they tell a story. Like a lot of the most popular songs tell a story. And this one is telling a story about a troll that trolled us for over a decade that we named Calm Down Charlie. And so we're going to play that. I'm not going to talk over it. But you tell me, is that a great song or not? Because I can guarantee you it's a very addictive song, that feller. You have a great night. Hugs for everybody. We'll see everybody on tomorrow night's show where we come out and we praise the nuclear industry on being scumbags.
In the Tokyo Bureau, swirling smoke and neon beams. Chicago division, fueled by heated dreams. Calm down, Charlie calls in, voice smooth as silk. Says, Dana, you're dreaming, don't cry over spilt milk. On Dana Durnford show, the chatter's turning wild, but Charlie shoots it down with that cool cat style. Unit 3's no killer, no harm to see life. He chuckles in the static, cuts through the strife. Oh, calm down, Charlie, with his nuclear charm. He says starfish are just fine, there's no alarm. His words dance on airwaves with a confident glow. Calm down, Charlie steals the whole radio show. With a snap and a grin, Charlie's voice so clear scatters the dread, dispels all the fear. Mux didn't hurt, he croons with a sigh. Science is for thinkers, not a whim or lie. Though Dana and the crowd may shout and roar, Charlie's unfazed, he's heard it all before. His swinging rationale, like a soothing song, says, hold on to logic, we gotta stay strong. Oh, calm down, Charlie, with his nuclear charm. He says starfish are just fine, there's no alarm. His words dance on airwaves with a confident glow. Calm down, Charlie steals the whole radio show.